you guys ready?
Yep.
We are in, I will call the meeting to order. I note that there is a quorum present, and let's do the flags.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, let's move into additions and revisions to the agenda. I would like to add under new business. I know, breaking protocol here, but I would like to add the discussion about the Thielman versus Secretary of State lawsuit and the common interest agreement, just to bring the court up to speed on what we know so far. So we'll add that under new business under 6.4. Anything else to add? Okay. Let's move into correspondence and public comment. Individuals wishing to address the county court may do so at this time. And at other times throughout the meeting, speakers are asked to raise your hand to be recognized by the chair, give your name and address, and limit comments to 3 minutes. For folks who are dialing in from the phone, it is *6 to unmute yourself. If you're on your computer, it's the lower left-hand side of your Zoom screen. And as a reminder, we are very informal here. So as we move through the agenda, if there are items that you would like to provide input on, ask questions about, we welcome that. So for now, any public comments? It's all county staff online, anybody in the courtroom. Okay, let's move into correspondence then. Couple of items in here. First up is the fiscal year 2022-2023 special projects grant program final report from the city of Condon. It is in your packet. There is also a third quarter report from our Veteran Services Officer, Paul Conway, who is sadly wrapping up his time as our Veteran Service Officer. So he is going to be missed. I am happy to report that Sherman County did call and say that they have found an excellent replacement who is currently the Veteran Service Officer, I believe, over in Hood River. So as soon as we get a chance for him to come see the court, we will let you know, but I believe he actually lives in Arlington, is what I heard. So he will be local to us, which is great, but continue to go between the 3 counties. So I'll more on that as soon as I have confirmation that when his start date is, and we'll get him on the calendar to come see us. In the meantime, as a reminder, if you know of a veteran in our community, the Veteran Service Officer is here to help. So please make sure that you connect them with Paul. And then eventually our new one, Paul is in the courthouse here on Thursdays up here, just behind us. And then he works in Sherman and Wheeler County, but always available on his cell phone. So great if people need help with health care or other things, getting their medals. He can do all sorts of things for them. So please connect them if you hear of somebody who needs a service.
When's his last day?
30% into the month. Last thing in here is a letter from our friends at the Bureau of Land Management, letting us know about a decision approving the acquisition of approximately 4,020 acres of private land on the west side of the John Day River at McDonald's Crossing. I won't read the whole letter. For folks who are interested, all 3 of these items are part of the court packet. They are online with the rest of the agenda materials. So, okay, let's move into consent agenda.
Okay, so I would like to pull 4.1, 4.5, 4.6, and 4.7.
4.1, 4.5.
5, 6, and 7.
5, 6, and 7. Okay. All right. Do we have a motion on the rest? And you want me just to add them? Okay, first of all, let me ask, are you pulling them
I have a question on
Completely.
the minutes regarding policy and stuff, abstentions and recusals.
Okay,
So
And
do we
then
want
the
to
other
discuss
three,
that
I do not
first?
believe have been in front of the court again, and I just respectively ask that we put them on the agenda and have a discussion and update for all the court members rather than throwing them in the consent agenda.
okay. Is it, okay, first, let's take these one at a time. Okay, so for the regular meeting minutes, we want those pulled entirely, right? While we ask legal
Yeah,
counsel.
I think we
a
need to
question?
talk to council.
Okay, so those will be pulled completely off the agenda. And then 4.5, 6, and 7,
Need to add back.
just added below. Okay, so.
I'm assuming 7, 2, 3, and 4, because I don't believe it's any of these are old business.
Yeah. Okay, we'll do them at 6.5, 6.6, and 6.7.
Is it? No, okay.
Does that?
Yeah.
Because I added the 6.4 for the.
Yeah.
Lawsuit. Do you want to talk more about process on consent agenda? Or do we want to just go ahead and approve what we have?
Should we approve what we have and then talk about it?
Sure.
I move to approve the consent agenda with 4.2, 4.3, and 4.4 included.
Okay,
Second,
it's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda, which consists of consider approval of April 19th, 2023 executive session minutes, consider approval of May bills pending review, and consider approval of intergovernmental agreement with Oregon State University for extension services. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Let's talk process on consent agenda, and then we can, the last three will add to the bottom of the agenda under new business.
So,
that was in the one you're talking about is the
yeah, it's gonna be
Matter,
under where we pulled,
resolution. The salary schedules for the,
that's where we pulled the emergency, manager officers. Is that it? Yeah.
Mhm.
Where we pulled that, when we go through the motions, it shows that are recused with a potential conflict. Probably actual. But it shows that I abstained in the vote. And my question is, how can you be part, if you recuse yourself in the process, how can you abstain?
So we need to figure out how to properly
How to properly-
document.
Yeah, because I
Yeah,
think
okay.
Delaney says we've kind of been doing this in the past. I haven't caught it before. But in times and motions, an abstention is a no vote against the motion in the sense.
Yeah,
And it's sort of part of the process that I was really recused from,
right.
but I'm not sure what the legal. I think
Yeah.
it's probably you have a quorum, you just aren't included in the vote, but
Yeah, I think there's probably some way we need to make clear that you're still in the room, but you're not voting. You know, like,
well, and he's not necessarily a no vote. He's just
Correct.
a
I'm just not.
neutral
mhm,
person that not.
And I think it's not necessarily a no vote, but it comes off that way against the motion every time.
right, and they're two different things, actually. When you abstain, you're actually saying, I'm not voting on, I'm not saying yes or no.
Yeah.
Which is not the same as saying, I'm not saying anything at all.
Yeah.
Fun, okay, so we will ask that question of legal and
Just in the
then,
process of a motion, if you abstain, you haven't supported the motion, and if the motion fails, it's really not a vote in favor.
Yeah. so,
Actually, it's more like we have to have two people to have a quorum. So
We should
if
be,
you abstain and then one of us votes no, then it fails, but
mhm,
well,
see, I don't see it as a necessarily a no vote.
it still.
Cause
ends
it's
up
just
being-
like me not voting for myself
It
for
would
that.
still end up being a no vote.
No, actually, it ends up being
But
that
that doesn't really matter.
there's only two of us
Mhm.
that can actually vote
To
and
pass it,
yes.
but once it fails, it becomes a no vote. Or an abstention if you didn't vote in favor. I mean, it's just a concept of looking at how abstentions can work in motions.
Mhm. I think we'll just need to ask them in the minutes, how do we make sure that it's clear that there was a quorum present? If a commissioner has a conflict and is still in the room but is not voting. So that it's clear that there wasn't we didn't accidentally leave you off in the minutes or something. There needs to be
Yeah.
some kind of thing that
So,
indicates like,
My question is, if he's up here where he said he recused himself, does he have to even be in this part? Is be more what?
But I think run it through legal and make sure we
yeah.
get a process we're following consistently.
Yeah, I think you could probably even do like Shannon recused due to conflict or something, so it's crystal clear that, that it wasn't a ham abstaining from the vote, because I've abstained, as you know, Pat, I've abstained from a vote before where it wasn't a conflict, I just did not vote on it, there is that option,
I usually don't abstain because I usually have a.
yeah, you do. Okay, I've only abstained once, I think, on the entire time I've been on the court, but, okay, so we will check that out. In terms of consent agenda, I have a proposal for this. It's always tricky when Delaney and I are trying to figure out what to stick on the consent agenda, what needs further discussion. So as you guys both know, we give you a pre-draft of the agenda before we finalize it and send it out. So would it be an acceptable compromise? Just so you know, my default is going to consistently be put it on the consent agenda. If it's something that is routine in nature, like we pass it every year, every 2 years, or it's something we've spoken about previously. Part of that is just administratively getting the packet out. It is much easier for us to do one briefing with the routine stuff than to have separate ones for each. So, but I also, that's a prejudgment that I'm having to make about whether you guys are going to want to discuss it further or not. So as a compromise, what would you think about when we send the pre-agenda out to you guys, the initial draft? We'll put everything in where we think it should go, but if there's anything up front that you're saying, Kat or Leah, hey, you know what, there needs to be more discussion about this, that you go ahead and just flag that for Delaney, and then we can move it down into a spot. And if you don't have any concerns with what's on there, then we'll just move it forward as is. Does that work for you guys?
Yeah.
I would, the one thing I would say was I was in a board meeting last week, the week before. And Commissioner Higgy from Wasco County brought exactly the same thing up with the same way I feel about the consent agenda and stuff not being in it. I mean, his feeling is going, it should be mainly about minutes and I know you don't agree with me. I
Yeah.
get that, but I'm always gonna, that's my go-to too.
Yeah.
I think that, for the purpose of public meeting, the opportunity to discuss, especially something that has not been before the court before, should not be thrown into a consent agenda.
Okay,
Yeah, that's why I didn't have a problem meeting the OSU agreement on there that has been, it's just a renewal.
And I kind of have a problem with that one. I mean, she was gonna pull it, but it's,
He agreed not to.
it's just, you know, when it's. For the purpose of public meeting, and we have open meetings and we offer public, we're not necessarily the ones that may lean in on something or a question. It's like the road agreement on Ray Road. There are residents that might have an issue and we just run it through a consent agenda and approve it and then hear about it later.
I mean, I get that, but I also think like during consent agenda, just like what we're doing right now, people can come and say, hey, I have a problem with this Ray Road thing. And I want to voice my opinion right now while we're talking about consent agenda. The only difference is from an administrative standpoint, I mean,
So typically, Liz, when we do public opinion, they comment and we don't give any feedback to that comment typically. We just move on.
depends. Depends on what it is. If they're coming to speak directly about something on the agenda, we often are doing give and take during the, but they usually are waiting until it's that point in the agenda. But under consent agenda, even under the motion, part of that is discussion. Like, there's nothing that says under the consent agenda that you can't talk
Which
about
we do.
these things.
Which we do. I mean,
Right,
if I got questions, I always ask them. But I just, my feeling is that if it's something new, it should probably be on the agenda.
but define new for me. Because for instance, the IGA with OSU is a long-standing agreement that's been here for way before I got here.
That's why I didn't vote.
So do we keep it? I mean, the Oregon Trail Solar, we approved every other agreement related to them building here. It's not really new because we approved the pilot, we approved the road use agreement. This is them actually using the road. So is that new? Or is that a continuation of the decisions that the court already, see what I'm not trying to argue with you. I'm just saying when you're sitting in this chair trying to decide how to shape the meeting to be more productive.
I can go with the compromise and get it off there if I want it off. That's what we've been doing.
Okay, that's fine too. I mean,
Yeah, and I
you
agree
always
with
have the
your-
right to pull things out.
Cause we see the agenda, we can look at it.
My problem, I think, has been for me personally, is I don't always look at it right after it gets me.
Yeah,
And then it ends up pretty late in the process to pull it or let the way go. And then.
you want me to have Miranda call you as soon as it goes out?
Should demand about that. Have you read your
I'm quite
agenda?
as busy as I once was, so maybe I'll get to a little sooner in the week.
Miranda, please make a note to call Commissioner Shannon when Delaney releases the first draft. So he reads his email. Okay, all right, I feel like we've got a good working arrangement, but if something changes, let us know. Like I'm trying to kind of balance the efficiency with proper transparency.
And I'm trying to keep the efficiency from being viewed as a negativity by the voters.
I got that.
Well, and just because it's in consent agenda doesn't mean it can't be discussed,
No, but it.
like we're doing right now, so.
I get that. There are some that have concern. And I've always felt that way, so it's on the record.
And then I would say too, still, it is posted online, they can go through and read it. So,
And it isn't, just note for people that are watching at home, the consent agenda, all of the documents are on
yeah,
there as well. So it's not like it's,
I
like.
mean, I can see both sides,
Mhm. We just,
Well, I think we can both see both sides. It's just.
yeah.
One leans one way and one leans one way.
Mhm.
See, and
Well, the
I
person-
don't have people.
the
complain to
person
me
who
about
puts the
consent
packet
agenda.
together
That's
leans
another
toward
thing.
efficiency.
I have the, when are they gonna fix this road? And I'm like, I don't know, I don't have anything to do with that.
Okay. So we will forge ahead and do our best to be mindful about being selective about what goes on consent, but also giving you guys opportunity to adjust the agenda before we release it to the public so that you can kind of give us feedback on if we got it right on the consent agenda. Okay, that being said, time to move on, I think, to unfinished business. 5.1 is discussion regarding restructuring of Oregon Youth Corps program. Okay, guys, so hold on, let me catch up here. Consent, actually, I'm gonna need this, aren't I? For later, okay. So let me just get organized. I want to do a little presentation. Yes, please.
Was this your little work of art?
This is mine, yeah.
I read it.
I created a, this was actually something that was initially developed through our rocket process, and then I have revised it. One, I think is important. You guys hear me talk about all the nitty-gritty details all the time about childcare and early education access. I'm going to start trying to dig in a little bit more so you guys have the foundational, you're not just listening to me randomly in a meeting. And so the first one I want to dig into why workforce matters for childcare, and then why specifically I'm proposing a change in this program. You're good. Give us just a second. Delaney's going to share screens here in a minute. There we go. Okay, so just
Does
as
that screen need turned towards them a little bit?
can you guys see?
Yeah, you see.
Okay, so this was again a product that started with our Rocket 1.0 process. One of the subgroups was working specifically on developing an early education workforce pipeline. So let's get into the details here a little bit. First, we're going to start with a little math problem. For every 8 children, ages 0 to 3 in the Condon Early Learning Center, we need a minimum of 2 qualified teachers to maintain the state of Oregon's 4-to-1 licensing ratio. That, of course, assumes that each of those teachers is going to work 50 hours per week, will never get sick or go on vacation, never use the restroom, eat lunch, or otherwise leave the classroom while they're on duty. Currently, the Condon Early Learning Center has 15 children ages 0 to 3 on their wait list. This means we need a minimum of 4 more qualified teachers to serve every family requesting care in that classroom. Again, assuming these teachers, are superhuman.
This is just 0 to 3. Huh?
This is just 0 to 3. This assumes that they're going to work those 50 hours, never get sick, which always, when you work with 0 to 3s, never happens. There's no illness in that room. Never go on vacation, eat lunch, use the bathroom, any of those things. So really, what we're talking about is needing 6. Because in order to cover that time, cover breaks, be able to assume that teachers are going to go and do training, they may want to take a vacation every once in a while. You actually need 6 qualified teachers to cover those 15 kids.
You got 7.
You know, we got 7 on there.
Do you want? Oh my goodness. 7's even better. Man. Nobody's pointed that out before. Okay, listen. I apparently need to go back and do
That's
math.
for the extra person for when they go to the bathroom.
That's why it's not so simple math problem.
Exactly. So the problem, our early education providers need a deep talent pool of educated, experienced teachers and aides within our communities in order to meet the demand of families with young children. The solution is for us to develop an early education workforce pipeline, primarily by doing a homegrown approach where we are identifying middle and high school students who have an aptitude for and an interest in early education as a career, and by making sure that we're creating pathways for them to reach that goal. We'll also just note that the school districts themselves, through their Student Success Acts, this is in alignment with their own career-related goals that they are setting through their funding, where I know, especially in Condon, they had a discussion, I think maybe 2 meetings ago at the school board, talking about how to better structure their work experience programs within the high school to better connect students with potential career pathways and give them an opportunity to actually have meaningful work experience that hopefully can either allow them to say, this isn't for me, or, okay, now I understand what working in this career looks like, and here's, I'm in, kind of thing. Okay, so I'm going to walk through the entire pathway. The part in particular we're going to focus the discussion on is the Oregon Youth Corps early educators, but I want to give you the whole sense of what the pathway looks like, and then we'll go back and talk about the early educators. So step number one, this is for engagement ages 4th to 5th grade. School districts and early learning centers are partnering in annual early education career exploration field trips. Basically, students are able to go tour our early learning centers. This is sort of the initial introduction to those students that early education is a professional career that they might want to consider. The next step is the super sitter workshop. So OSU has a super sitter curriculum that is designed really for kids in 6th through 8th grade. This is sort of the age where they're starting to be home alone. Maybe parents are letting them watch younger siblings for little bits of time, maybe starting to babysit if they're on the older end of that scale. And so Marilee and her team have been working on putting together an annual workshop that basically covers safety, childcare skills, basic first aid, rescue skills. And then that part of that curriculum also has business skills, which is an interesting thing, maybe for the chamber to think about partnering for those who may want to have their own little babysitting business and what that would look like. So again, the idea is you may get a 4th and 5th grader who was exposed and then decides, hey, I want to now go to the super sitter workshop and maybe have my own babysitting business. But it also allows somebody who's coming in new to this, who skipped the 4th and 5th grade career exposure as a 6th grader and have a pathway into this pipeline. Third one is Oregon Youth Corps early educators. So this is going to be, assuming we sign off on it, a big change for what would in the community have been known as our OYCC program. Basically what I'm proposing, and we'll get into details, is that we redesign the program to provide students with training and hands-on work experience in our early education centers. The OYCC teams would be placed in our early learning centers. They would gain training, basic employment skills, and mentoring from early education professionals. The engagement age for that is 8th through 12th grade. And then on the next slide, we'll talk a little bit more about training. So the idea is the OIC Early Educators Program will kick off with a group training covering Foundations for Learning curriculum. So basically, this is a curriculum that was developed by Oregon Early Learning Division. And so it has a bunch of safe sleep for infants and how to recognize child abuse and a bunch of sort of basic skills that they need, as well as food handlers and CPR training. The great thing about this is as soon as our OIC participants complete this training, which we think we can do in maybe the first 1 or 2 days of the program, they qualify as an assistant 1 in a licensed center, which means that they can count in ratio for the center. So that's going to allow that 6/7 we were talking about, they'll be able to count in that 6/7 that we are trying to develop.
That's what that person is.
Next up is the Early Educators Internship Program. This is not developed, this is just conceptual, but basically this would be a collaboration with the school districts that during the school year for their primarily juniors and seniors who have schedules that allow them to have work experience, that the school districts and the early learning centers would be working to place those kids that have shown an aptitude or an interest in early ed during the school year. So sort of a continuation of what we're doing. My idea, now that the schools have identified their Student Success Act as dollars as a way that they're going to be doing more of this, is that there may be some synergy there for them to be able to do that. The goal is that in order to qualify as an assistant 2, you have to be 18 years of age and have had 240 hours of classroom experience. So the idea is we can help them get that classroom experience. When they turn 18, they qualify as aid 2s, which gives them even more, then they're able to be alone with children. There's a bunch of other things that will help our centers in terms of their ratios. Next up is the Early Education Fundamentals Certificate. This is, the one I'm referencing right now is a Columbia Gorge Community College. There are several community colleges in the state that provide a similar certificate. The idea, again, this is a partnership between our high schools and Columbia Gorge. And it's through the early college programs that both schools currently have, but it's basically making sure that students who are continue to indicate that they're interested in early ed as a pathway are being connected with those college courses in their sort of final years of high school. And then from that, it builds onto the early education curriculum certificate. This is sort of the next early childhood education certificate at the community college level. So the idea again is like for a high school graduate, they would be able to take the previous step plus this step right out of high school. And basically those combined together get them very close to having the next step, which is the early education associate's degree, which is the next step. Once they hit that, the associate's degree, they are qualified as teachers in the classroom. So potentially what I'm telling you is almost all of the steps up until these last ones can be completed while our students are in high school. Meaning that they can graduate and have maybe a year or two in a community college and be certified teachers ready to be in a classroom and hopefully in our centers.
And are those classes available online?
Quite a few of them are. Since COVID, a lot of the community colleges have started moving to either an online or a hybrid where you can choose depending on your availability. I have been having conversations with the community college about what would it take to make sure all of their classes are online so that our high school students could do it. And I also have been talking to them about designing them in a way, there's a difference between online, but at a set time and online as self-serve. And for our high school students, it would be helpful if they were a self-serve so that at the high school, they can work around whatever calendar they're using in that particular, and because a lot of their onlines right now are geared toward working professionals who are connecting at like 6 p.m. when a lot of our high school students are in, athletics or doing some other thing. Yeah. So my hope is over time, especially as we build this out, that if the community college can kind of make some tweaks in their calendar, that we can see, there may even be, if we have some ambitious students, some who may be pretty close to actually having their associate's degree upon graduation, which would be amazing. So that is the pathway. This is sort of the pitch. You guys know, we've been talking about this all the time, but for the public, why this matters to you, why you should care about this. I'm going to walk through the reasons why we need to do this and why we need to do it now. Gilliam County is an early education desert. What that means is that for every 3 children, ages 0 to 3, there is 1 slot available. So basically a third or less of families have care when they need it. And as a result, employers are struggling to recruit and retain employees, especially those with young children. It's a significant barrier, as we all know, to growing and strengthening our economy. The problem is likely going to get worse, not better. One of the blessings from COVID is that employers are now able to allow telecommuting options. We have a lot more families with young children here than we did pre-pandemic. I think that will continue. I think people are tired of living in urban, stuff, and they want to come out where there's wide open spaces and smaller schools, class sizes, and all of the things. But that means that they're going to need childcare when they're here. Licensed providers, as you saw before, cannot increase the number of slots available. When we're talking about building expansions, all of that stuff, none of that matters if there's not enough teachers in the classroom to meet state ratio requirements. The perception is changing as far as early education as a profession. I spoke yesterday, as you guys heard during the budget committee, we have got to internally stop referring to them as childcare providers. They are teachers, they have degrees, and we need to talk about them that way. This is a professional career path. And then finally, we're seeing a lot more public interest and private interest in investing in early education. And so in order to sort of really capitalize on that, we need to get started getting these kids access to the pathway. So action item number 1 is to reimagine the Oregon Youth Conservation Corps as the Oregon Youth Corps Early Educators Program.
The whole thing?
The whole thing. Then I'll walk you through that. That's my presentation on there, but I'll walk you through the rest of the detail. Okay, so here's I've been thinking a while about OIC, and I actually met a couple of weeks ago with the I forget Jeremy's last name, but he basically is our contact at the state. So our grantee for the OICC program. And we were talking about different ways to maybe reimagine the program to work a little bit better for the participants. What I have observed watching now for 4 years, and I think even beyond, I don't think this was just limited to the 4 years I've been here, is that we have had, it has been a consistently, I think, chaotic program. We've had a hard time recruiting a leader. Often when we've been able to recruit a leader, they often were just maybe a few years above the participants, which I think really made it challenging for those leaders to succeed, because they were trying to lead their peers in kind of a first job experience, which was really asking for them. It really was not setting them up to be successful, I think. We consistently struggled to come up with enough projects for the kids. Especially when we have our 100-degree days, it's really challenging to get them into a place where they are wanting to work and they're actually accomplishing projects. The list kind of just goes on and on and on. It has consistently been a program that I think was asking to be rethought.
Well, and as a public member who was right on Main Street, watching them, you know, pick the dirt out and weeds out of the sidewalk and stand around, is not a good use of the money.
Correct. That's how I felt.
So is this a Gilliam County changed the program, or is this
So
statewide, or what do we?
So when I talked to the state, originally what I had envisioned was a year-round program where we would place 1 or 2 kids with SWCD, basically. And we would, rather than fund a little work group, we would do just 1 or 2 kids so that they had more one-on-one mentorship with Herb's team. That was the initial thought process, which the state said, oh, we could probably support that. While I was having this conversation with Jeremy, I asked him, is this the traditional like kids in the woods kind of project? You know, like this program originally was called Oregon Youth Conservation Corps. And the idea was like youth participants were going out, they were building trails. They were exactly like really conservation or resource-based work experience. When I had the discussion with Jeremy, however, he said that the program itself has been changed at the state to allow more flexibility for communities to identify needs and allow their work groups to help address those needs. So as an example, there's one community that their crew works on food insecurity, and they run a community garden all summer. That's their project. And then he happened to mention that 2 other communities use their crews for childcare. And he just kind of slipped it in, and I wasn't even thinking that, but I asked him to tell me more. And basically I sort of gave him this early concept that you're looking at and said, could this be something? Could we do this? And he said, absolutely. So the idea would be, and you can kind of see a timeline on the second page that I gave you of this concept, but the idea would be that for our youth who are identifying as wanting to do conservation work, natural resources-based work, rather than have them in this crew and going through this system, we would be placing them through our summer work experience program so that they can have more one-on-one mentorship with businesses and organizations. So for instance, SWCD would probably take an intern or two kind of thing. There may be other entities that could use a youth, so I want to make clear, like, we still want to accommodate those kids who
don't want to go into childcare.
Exactly. So the idea would be we would funnel them through another existing program instead and just find the right placement with them one-to-one, basically.
That makes sense.
And then for this one, because we know that this is a need, one of the stipulations from the state is that part of the program is that they need to really learn teamwork as they're participating. And so the way that we've structured this, I'll kind of walk through, but the idea is that we would start recruiting this month. And we would recruit 7 to 8 participants. Then in early June, we would kick off to 2 to 3 days of training, like I talked about, where they're going to get their sort of certifications to be a licensed aide right off the bat. Then we'll place them into 2 groups. There'll be one placed in Arlington, one placed in Condon. And so they'll work as smaller teams, 1 of 3 and 1 of 4, most likely, and be supervised by the directors of those centers. So we're not going to need to find team leads or any of those things. So Janine will supervise here, Kelsey will supervise in Arlington. They'll get their hands-on experience working with each other and also with the licensed aides and teachers that are already employed. Then in mid-July, we are proposing to reunite them so that we want to make sure that the 2 groups get to mix a little bit. So we would bring them back mid-program to do a training day and a possible field trip. Part of the project or part of the OAC program is the idea that you're exposing participants to new things that they wouldn't already get to see. And so we're thinking about, maybe taking them to either a college where they have this early ed stuff so they can kind of visit that, maybe even taking them to one of the larger like early ed centers in Portland so they could see like, what a Montessori school looks like, how that may be different from what they see in Condon, just so they have exposure to different kinds of early education. So that would take place in mid-July, then they'd go back to their centers, basically work until the end of the summer. And then we would reconvene them in mid to late August to do a final project that they would collaborate on. The idea would be each year that project would change. It would track with what we are developing on our roadmap as needs. So if we're developing, hey, we need to do a public education campaign on this topic, like that might be something that this group works on. The first one that we're proposing, which was Delaney's brilliant idea, which I love, is that we would work with them and possibly the Condon Arts Council for them to develop a video that starts at the beginning with them talking about their perceptions of early education as a career at the beginning of the summer versus at the end, as a way to recruit kids into the program in future years, and also to educate the public about how early educators, that's a professional career, and what it takes basically to become one and what they've sort of learned along the way. So that is that's a nutshell of what I'm proposing. It's a huge shift, I know.
I like it.
But I really think for the kids who participate, it will be much more structured. They will literally be able to walk out of here and be able to walk into a center anywhere in the state and be licensed on day 1. And probably by the end of it, if some of these kids turn 18, they actually would probably qualify as A2s right out of high school.
And they have to be 18 to get there.
To be A2 by state licensure, they have to be 18.
And then in the discussions around the state, as they look at daycare, has there been any discussions around looking at the ratios to see?
So I can get into that a little bit more, but I got myself onto the rules committee that writes the rules for the centers. So I am actually looking at that on Friday on ratio.
I mean, there has to be some data to support something like that, obviously, but is it an overkill that's killing the supplement?
I would say for the 0 to 3, probably not. having a toddler around, thinking about how you would care for 4 infants at the same time, like that's probably on track for like 1 to 4. That might even be a little generous, honestly. Anybody who had a child recently can attest. Yeah, exactly. But there is going to be, I think, hopefully greater flexibility in the rules to be able to cover breaks and things like that. It's one of the challenges right now is the aides themselves are restricted on how much time they can spend with the kids alone. Even, and that includes taking them to the bathroom or.
Stipulations on there, you gotta have that many people in the room every minute.
Yep.
That's another body at
Mhm.
least in a small setting.
Yeah. So, but the great news, at least over the summer and even during the school year, I mean, I go to pick up Ainsley. There's usually 1 or 2 high school kids working in her classroom at the end of the day, and that allows Janine to send home a teacher. You know, that allows her to send an aide home so that she can manage her own staff and avoid them getting burned out, because these high school kids are coming in and bless them, have way more energy to chase toddlers around and all of the stuff. So I think this program can be a win-win, and honestly, it would not surprise me, not to toot our own horns, but if people start looking at what we're doing and saying, oh, we could actually do this in our community too.
Is there any, maybe this is a data question too, and when times have changed, and when I was a kid, when I turned 18, I didn't want to have a career path. The career path I picked was, probably not going anywhere. But it's what I was gonna do, and you're gonna change my mind.
Mm-hmm.
So is there any programs or data out there that they can say that introducing them to a pathway that early, I mean, that young age has results at 18, or do they just go through that and so fast?
I suspect there will, I mean, because part of the career path is also identifying who isn't cut out to be an early educator. So.
Like Art Hardy used to tell me, I just learned one more thing today I don't want to do for the rest of my life.
Exactly. So,
Well,
but.
and I think sometimes when you're a kid in high school and you're looking at career paths to go into, and you think, oh, early childhood, that might be a great career, and this is gonna put them right there, and they're gonna know right away.
Whether they want to or not.
Yes.
Yeah. I will say, and Janine's actually on her, so she might be able to speak to this as well, but like the high school students, you can, Ainsley's been in the center long enough that you can tell who has the aptitude pretty quickly when you're interacting with their teachers and aides. And this high school group that she has, there's good aptitude in it.
I think the kids pick up on it too.
Yeah.
They either like.
So I guess I missed the piece for kids that don't want to do this. I get caught up in the acronyms here.
Yes.
What are we doing with this?
So.
Because this is just really focused on the childcare side of it, and what is it happens to the kid that's absolutely doesn't want to do this, it's not gonna be this summer, next summer.
It'll be this summer, actually,
This summer.
if we're okay with it.
Okay.
Yeah. No, so for the kids who would normally be going through OIC, and primarily because they're looking for outdoor work, looking for some, what we're doing is all of the kids are gonna complete the same application, and they're gonna identify which programs they're interested in. For the kids who normally would be going through OIC, they're gonna go through our normal summer work experience program. So they'll first identify themselves by submitting an application, and then the 3, Miranda and Delaney and Amy have been working hard this week on beginning to identify employers who are willing to sponsor placements. And so once we're asking, Amy's going to be in the schools next week to actually talk to the kids about applying and all of the things. But what we'll be able to do is, rather than have this work crew, we're going to place each of those kids individually. So
they're more in the
Right, so we'll be talking to like SWCD to say like, hey Herb, can you use one or two? Those would be natural fits for
So
kids
does
who
that
are,
eliminate the need altogether of leaders?
yes.
Cause I say, if you're gonna have any type of crew work, can you do that with the new prevention service person as a leader and then?
Well, because the crews themselves now are gonna only be the early educators and they're gonna be placed in the center, so those directors will actually be the leads.
I got it.
So Amy, you raised your hand. Maybe?
Okay, yeah, I did. I just have to figure out how to unmute. So, the other thing I'm excited about with the program too is we're revamping the application per some community member input that we had to be a little more kid friendly. And on it, Miranda's working on that right now. We're going to be adding, like, do they have a place they're interested in working? Because my whole thought with this too is, you know, like if they're interested in plumbing and Jameson needs somebody, then we should match that child with what they're possibly interested in. So hopefully we'll be getting kids into businesses of where maybe they want to pursue a career in that too. I mean, we might not be able to place them all. If we had 5 plumbers, Jameson probably doesn't need 5 assistants, but like just an example to try to get them into some areas that they're interested in as well. So while the childcare, the OIC program will have kids interested in early education, hopefully we'll also get kids interested in some other avenues in our communities that they want to pursue when they get older too. So I really like that they'll have some input on their application and then we can try to match them where they are interested. So
The matching process, just been around it a few years, a lot of times you'll have an employer that wants a specific kid. You can accommodate that, because you know, usually that works into a pretty good situation for everybody.
Yeah, we're allowing that too. So Delaney, earlier this week sent out a Google Doc or a Google Sheets form to our employers just to begin soliciting interest. And one of the questions was, do you have a youth in mind, or have you had one that you worked with previously? So we'll be matching those up
I
to.
think that got a little skewed up in the past and was a little problematic at times and some stuff like that, but yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like, I mean, we are using, because this transition happened with Teddy's retirement pretty quickly, Amy, Miranda, Delaney, and I are all working as a team to sort of get these programs stood up on a pretty tight timeline. So it's not going to be perfect for families who are at home, you know, like there's going to be bumps for sure, but we're trying to do as much as we can in streamlining the application process and really being thoughtful about how we're placing kids and how we're running the program. So we're also, Amy's going to be working on actually doing some hands-on jobs training before they're actually placed. So that we're clear about expectations, making sure that they're checking in if they're going to miss work, like all of those sort of employee 101 things.
Yeah, they need to learn how you do sick leave and
Exactly.
all those little on the job deals that come up there. They don't exactly know those.
Exactly. So we are going to make that a mandatory training. And so youth will not be able to start their placements until they have had those trainings. So Amy and Miranda are working on the curriculum and what that's going to actually look like. But we'll have some in-person training, and then we'll allow for some makeup for kids who have a conflict for those days. So it's coming together.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
This is exciting. Does this mean the daycare will be able to take more kids, or just relieve the teachers for now?
So for now, until the expansion is built, they have the two things constraining them are square footage and teachers. So until the expansion is built next summer, they're still going to be at the same amount. But the nice thing, hopefully, is if some of these students who are now in high school decide in a year or two when they're about to graduate, hey, this is my path. Hopefully they're deciding they're going to stick around and be teachers, which will allow hopefully Janine to be able to have the staff she needs to be able to meet the need. Yeah, it's exciting.
I think it's great.
Great presentation.
Thank you.
I like the pathway as well, and when you can deliver to a community a program like that, it's fantastic.
Great, thanks.
I think it's a way more,
Useful way to use the program.
yes. Instead
Program
of
is not,
picking
this
weeds.
program has just been kind of, the last few years it's been, yes,
It hasn't lived up
hard to
to
watch.
its,
It's been hard to watch.
hasn't lived up to its potential, I think. So I feel, and the nice thing, to your point earlier about data, Pat, is as we start developing this, I think we'll be able, you know, if Mary Lee's got a list of participants, we'll be able to track, okay, how many of these kids are now signing up for OACC or OIC? How many of these kids are staying and getting associate's degrees? How many are working in the centers 5 years later, kind of
Hard to
thing?
get data on something that hasn't happened.
Exactly. So we'll be able, I mean, part of my thought process is we're going to need to put in place some data collection so that we can show to the state even. And honestly, given all of the things that the state is looking at for childcare, it would not surprise me if we can show that this is a viable pathway. If we can't in a year or two go ask for some funding from the legislature to make it a more stable kind of program throughout the state. So anyway,
We're definitely more recognized at the state level than they have been in the past.
we are.
Remind me how much money we have in this available for this
So
program?
we have 87,000 for the biennium. So we are planning on spending about a little over 40 for each summer. So this summer there'll be about 40 and then next summer about 40.
Okay.
And then there, in addition, we just got an email this morning about an additional training grant that we can use for this too. So we're gonna look and see if we can bring in some more money to make sure the kids that we're connecting, if we're going on field trips or something to do that enrichment stuff, that we've got additional funds to be able to support them.
And you used to have to spend part of that for the leader too,
Yes,
so now
now we can
It'll all be
eliminate that
going
and it
towards the
all
kids.
goes to the kids.
Good.
I don't need a motion because there's not really a thing, but I just wanted to make sure it's a big enough change. I wanted to make sure that I was not totally
Yeah, it's-
overstepping your comfort area.
No, it's exciting to do something that may get some results.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. So we will move forward then. I've got a few details to work out with the state. There likely will be a revised grant agreement with them, just capturing that we're changing from the old model to this one. So that will probably come before us. But first I wanted to make sure that we were in agreement on concept.
But meanwhile, you're gonna be recruiting kids to.
Yeah, so Janine already has several who have reached out, who wanted to be placed through the old work experience program, now the OAC program. So we already have some kids identified, but Amy, like I said, is gonna be in the schools next week and we'll have applications for all. Both of the superintendents are gonna just do an all school or an all grade assembly and give her like 20-30 minutes to talk about all of the programs that we're doing. And then Janine's already been notified. We'll notify Kelsey as well that this is how we're gonna fund those and what the expectations are, but both centers have indicated they would like youth placed there anyway. So this is just a different funding stream and slightly different expectations.
And so we will fund the money to the childcare to pay those, or do we still have to run the payroll?
We're working with the state. I think they're still technically gonna need to be on our payroll.
Okay.
But we'll work that out with them. That was one of those details that I think what he said was ideally it would run through your payroll. That's what he said. But I didn't pursue ideally or must. So, we'll figure out those details, probably a little later this week. So, great. We were gonna move forward with this one then.
Good job.
I'm excited. Okay. Now that I've taken up an hour of our time, let's move on to 5.2, discussion regarding Oregon National Flood Insurance Program, Environmental Impact Statement, and BIOP, which is a Biological Opinion Coalition. Pat, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, so as I informed the court a while back that this was brought to my attention by Commissioner Yamamata from Tillamook County with concerns, and he's been lobbying hard for support from the rest of the counties in the state to really put up some resistance to what's going on. So what I've done since the last meeting is I attended the FEMA meeting in Pendleton on the 19th or something. Very low attendance at that meeting, 2 FEMA representatives, and kind of left there with the feeling after and talked specifically alone to both of the FEMA employees, and kind of left there like, maybe the whistle's being blown too loud on this and there's that big a deal. And then when I attended a buyout coalition meeting last Tuesday and completely reversed that opinion. And so it's been a confusing process, and I don't know all the details, but I'll walk you through what I'm getting out of it at this point. And this little pamphlet I passed out earlier, and I'm gonna do something
I
with.
think you took mine.
With the city of Arlington tonight, because I think they have some property that definitely is going to form some of the concerns, but basically, there was some opposition. My understanding was FEMA is required, and I believe through the SA, the Endangered Species Act, to do some things about floodplain. And the flood, they want to control it through floodplain insurance, through the floodplain insurance program. And so they're really making some drastic moves because they're getting to get some timelines. They're kind of in trouble because they haven't done anything. And so they're throwing this out there, trying to get one and ran into resistance. And then that required the buyout to happen. And so they did the biological opinion, and it came back with things that maybe are going to make it fairly difficult for communities to deal with, and some things impossible. What I'm getting out of at this point, and I'm gonna take the motel in Arlington property, the old motel that's been there vacant forever and ever and ever, the city of Arlington just bought, that lies in the floodplain, I'm pretty sure, because everything up that draw does. So in a floodplain, if you're going to go in and rebuild something, you would, if you take any fill out, you gotta put the same amount of material back in. If you take any material in, you gotta take the same material out. That's one of them. Two is anything that is an impervious surface, which would be buildings, and actually would be sidewalks and pavement, blah, 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 by square footage, you cannot expand when you rebuild. It has to be under that same, and originally they said footprint. The FEMA representative said, no, as long as the same square footage, you can move it around and do different things with it. You just can't expand the impervious square footage.
What is the square?
So this really makes it problematic when you start looking at how you redevelop something that's already got something there. But the worst of it is water quality, no net increase to impervious surfaces because of the water quality requirement in it. And so where you don't have any development today, you will never be able to develop. And so when I was on the buyout meeting the other day, I spoke out because you look, and I take Condon, I think most of Gilliam County used, what happened, because we talked the other day a little bit about why some counties are exempt. And those counties are exempt because they don't have migrating fish. This whole thing is being generated around the migration of salmon,
I get it.
steelhead, and blah, blah, blah. So my argument to him in the buyout meeting the other day is we have a community that lives on a hill 2,700 feet above sea level that has no migrating fish and has floodplains.
Yeah,
Will never have migrating fish.
yeah.
But every 30, 40 years might have a downspout and have a flood. Particularly, I remember 2 or 3 of them in my lifetime, one in 1963 when I was in school. But, you know, everybody talked about the 63 flood. And there was one when, I was in high school and tore up Cottonwood. And it was, you know, a 2-hour storm, 2 days in a row, that tore some roads out, and then it's over, done. And so the problem with this, what FEMA is doing, it's a broad brush, poof, of what we're gonna do with floodplains.
Mhm.
And I'm trying to pin, we got to Friday to kind of get in the coalition and respond. And I think we need to.
Yeah, because it help, like, I don't understand how. If there was an event up in Condon,
What they've done is we got the John Day River running through here in the Columbia down there, so we qualify. And
yeah,
they're gonna take all of our floodplains and treat them the same.
even though the communities. Are not sitting, I mean,
There's no endangered species concerns. The other thing that they're doing with this, just in the three things that you have to do is if you take out any, they're calling it vegetation, but they're really talking about trees. So if you take out old growth tree, and they don't have the numbers of what that means and what that looks like yet, you're gonna have to put in 4 or 5 small trees.
oh,
Make up for the one big one you took out. So there's a lot of stuff around this, and I understand Commissioner Youngman's concerns about getting it shoved down her throat, and once it gets closer to ruling. Right now, it's just in a process where they're taking comments on the buyout
mhm,
and trying to throw up enough resistance so they can get to the table to really get FEMA to look at, you know, this has to be treated a whole lot different than the way they're presenting it today.
well, and the other concern that I have, just seeing where their maps are right now,
They will.
they're not accurate.
No, but they will adapt those maps, the requirement of the law, the FEMA, national insurance, flood insurance requirements for their program will fall into wherever the floodplains are, if those change or adjusted, where there's quite a few people going through mapping.
Mhm,
We think ours will go down, floodplain
yeah,
acres will go down. Pendleton, however, is going through the same thing right now, and they're probably gonna go up to that recent flood that did a whole lot of damage that they had never had before.
Mhm.
And they're
Yeah.
going through the same thing and they think theirs will go up, so.
But how many years has it been since, I mean,
Well, what this is not addressing is this is stomping all over a 30-year flood through a downspout rainstorm and treating us like we're on the John Day River.
yeah,
In Condon and a lot of that, I mean, even if, and I, you know, when we look at this. And I think Jeff Pillar Consulting probably needs to be. Maybe somehow involved in where we're going with all. Another thing, most of the planners. That are involved in the counties right now are very involved in this process and we probably need to get ours involved a little more, because she's been kicking everything my way, which has been fine because I'm doing the research, but the more that we can do to
mhm,
make a good argument for Gilliam County, I think the better off we are. And you have to understand it because it is confusing and
mhm,
it's a federal program
yeah.
they're rolling out.
Well, right now, it would preclude us from ever developing Sheller Station. The whole
Right.
thing's in a floodplain right now.
Right,
So all of the industrial land that the county owns basically is.
Yep.
Well, that's helpful.
you need to throw some stretchers.
all your China
Let's
Creek
drag some
properties.
trailers in there.
All that China Creek properties through Arlington, and the fire hall and all that stuff, you know, there's some developable property come through there that. The court owns some,
Yeah,
to the ground course building, want to put up a sheriff station.
mhm,
Now, the good news is if you, and this is a pitch I'm gonna get to Arlington today, is this probably won't get to the end of the path until the end of 25, early 26. So if you, I mean, the message I'm getting is if you want to develop something, develop it now. Because if this goes through the way they're pushing it today, you won't get to after that happens. And Betsy Johnson was on that call the other day and she was talking about how the federal government, that when they get that close to rulemaking and that train's moving that hard, you'll never slow it down.
mhm,
So you have to get on board early and start putting up the resistance so you can get them to back up as soon as possible. Template letter came from somebody in the coalition. I can't remember exactly who,
mhm,
but there's some stuff that I thought we want to consider in inserting a particular land use or operation occurring within the floodplain. Because even the FEMA representative said, well, your specific examples are really important as they go through the process and make a decision. So I'm asking for some staff to help us. I can get some input, but I want to write. I don't want to fill in the blank. I'd be happy to sign it. And I think the easy thing for us to do is probably figure out how to use that template and get it submitted by Friday.
okay. So
I didn't put a motion in, but.
You know what? I did for you.
I did.
Yep. I
So,
would-
okay, so we're talking about joining the BIAP coalition formally, signing it, their letter, correct? And then inserting, and then.
Yeah, and when I
doing our
talked, I
own.
called Commissioner Yamamoto last night because I tried to get on this, and I called him last night, got a hold of him. My question was, because I was a little concerned after the BIAP coalition meeting, whether the coalition was gonna create a letter that everybody in the coalition signed. But he said, this is what they're sending out to everybody in the coalition, a
Got it.
template to kind of adapt to your situation, to sign and submit that writing.
Got it. Okay, so I'll make a motion. I move to join the BIAP coalition and to authorize Commissioner Shannon to finalize and submit public comments on behalf of Gilliam County to FEMA regarding implementation of the National Flood Insurance Program.
A second.
And then in discussion, we're gonna get staff help to fill out the letter.
You talk to them. But yes,
I
I'm,
mean, I think I got some examples that did get verbalized and get it in there. But, I mean, we've heard them today, but the motel in Arlington's a perfect one. China Creek Properties is a perfect one. Obviously Shovel Flat is, I don't know, up here in Condon, there might be some that Jeff might want to include in there with, you know, he's on Pioneer
let's ask them.
and know some of the properties that are available, and maybe he would have some language you'd want to put in there in regard to some specific property in Condon that's in flood zones that's not subject to any concerns.
You're gonna be around this afternoon. We'll work on it this afternoon, if that works for you. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded that we join the BIAP coalition and authorize Commissioner Shannon to finalize and submit public comments on behalf of Gilliam County to FEMA regarding implementation of the National Flood Insurance Program. Is there further discussion?
One other thing I would add is I do have a form that maybe somebody like Pillar Consulting might want to submit by Friday too.
Okay. As luck would have it, him and Nicole are my lunch date, so I'm happy to take it with me. Is there further discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, let's move into 6.1. Consider approval of modification to Condon School District fiscal year 2022-2023 capital investment grant agreement. Delaney, do you want to take this one?
Yes. We had Superintendent Schimmel with Condon School District reached out to request a modification and extension of their 2022-2023 capital investment grant. The grant was approved to replace the siding on the high school gymnasium. However, they discovered a leak in the roof over the shop, and after they inspected that, the roof is not repairable and it will need to be fully replaced. And as with everything construction, it will push it past the deadline for the grant. So they are requesting that we modify the grant to be allowed to be used for the shop roof replacement and extend the grant deadline to December 31st, 2023.
Any problem with it? I move to amend the 2022-2023 capital investment grant award to the Condon School District to authorize funding of the shop roof replacement and extend the grant period to December 31st, 2023, and to authorize the county judge to prepare and execute an amended grant agreement reflecting the same.
Discussion before a second?
How about
Second.
I'll second it, and then I'll say it's been moved and seconded that we amend the fiscal year 2022-2023 capital investment grant award to Condon School District to authorize funding the shop roof replacement and extend the grant period to December 31st, 2023, and to authorize the county judge to prepare and execute an amended grant agreement reflecting the same. Is there further discussion? Commissioner Shannon?
So this is more funding?
No, this is
Additional funding, or
their,
is this a grant?
so it's part of their current grant.
Yeah.
They had, part of one of their projects was to replace the siding
Yeah.
on the, and they're not going to do that
So this
project.
isn't replacing
Yeah,
that.
so we're
fund, it's the
replacing,
Same
yeah.
grants on
Yep,
asking for
no, no additional funds or anything.
Just the use will change.
Like we've done with some of our other.
More
ones recently.
dire,
the
Yeah.
need.
They're moving it to where they need to fix first. Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Move on to 6.2, small business grant program update. Caitlin, come on up. Thank you for all of your patience this morning.
Of course, it's interesting to see the court work so well together, inspiring actually. So we sent all the documentation to the court, should have been received in your packet. Just here today to kind of do a check-in with you all. It's been a very busy first quarter. I think it's evident to see that this grant program is doing great things in the community, definitely making an impact to businesses in both Condon and Arlington. Would like for the court to consider today replenishment of the fund, just so we can continue moving forward without that barrier of project concern.
You guys have questions?
I looked through, I did actually.
So that you guys remember as well that this is funded through the host fees budget. And so we have a small business grant / loan line item in there. That's where those funds come from. I can't remember now what the upcoming budget is. Do you remember how much is in it?
That was so for this particular fund, we funded their 23-24 for the 75,000 already. And so I think after we did that, I believe there's around 200, it's 200 or 300,000, I think, in that fund.
So there's sufficient funds should the court decide to replenish.
Just in the 3 months of the 2023 grant program, 11 businesses have applied. And one just came in yesterday, and a new application, and then a business stopped in as well to inquire about the parameters of the guide. 7 have been funded with 4 projects that are pending. And, you know, we're making folks work for this. They're required to submit a business plan, a budget. We've got partners that we're working with at both the SBDC and also Reinventing Rural to help guide their process. So the chamber's pretty much removed from, you know, their application and their budget and their business plan to make sure that we're staying extremely neutral. The committee, I think, is asking great questions and follow up to make sure that, you know, if there is vagueness on the grant, that we're going back, letting them know that, you know, we want to support you, but we need more information here.
So I know what my question was. It's like you had, I think you have Bobby Vaughn, Big River Pizza for 20,000. And then it looks like Big River Pizza was on here again for business expansion.
Yeah, that initial grant came in from Bobby Vaughn in February for potential purchase of that building. That grant has been approved, but it is not looking at this time like they will be able to fulfill their request. Potentially going a different route, which my advice to them yesterday was, we need to reapply. Let's put your new plan into a business plan and see if we can, you know, still continue to work together. So I anticipate.
Yeah, because I noticed you said approved pending for.
Yeah.
Purchase, which that looks like that's not going to go through at this point.
It does.
I'm thinking.
Yeah, it does look that way.
So the other one's been 2022, yeah.
Yeah, what you have in front of you today that we submitted is just information from 2023.
So they just want to do an upgrade down on some of the equipment.
For Big River, yes, HVAC and booths. And I'm not sure if you've been to that restaurant, but in the winter, it's freezing cold. You know, I mean, it's almost uncomfortable. And then in the summer, you know, they wanted to be a cooling station for the community at one point, but it was so hot in there, they weren't able to. That grant was approved upon reimbursement, and I stopped in on Friday of last week to purchase gift certificates, and she's got the HVAC already installed. I said, let's wait for the booths, right? Because we make sure that the projects are done.
I
Yeah.
like that you're waiting for
Yep.
the reimbursement.
We had one business on here that needed the funding up front. And so what we did is we built the cart out. We saw what was anticipated to be spent. They went ahead and purchased that with funding, and then we have the purchase proof of purchase as well.
Any questions or comments about? I mean, I think when we originally created it, the idea was, we didn't know what the interest level was gonna be. Let's just kind of do it and see how many people come. It definitely appears to be being used. So,
186,000 in the 2024.
got it.
2024 budget for the
What
small
was
business
that?
development.
How much?
How much
186,000.
is what is budgeted for the upcoming fiscal year?
You mean in the new budget?
Yeah.
So that,
It was 22 or
As of
23.
July 1.
Okay.
and so that's what's budgeted from this year.
So we could approve the 75,000 for July 1st.
So that's a question maybe for you, Keelan. So our fiscal year is about to roll over
Mhm.
here in a couple, 2 months? Could we, if we agreed and released the funding in the new budget,
Mhm.
which would be, I mean, we wouldn't probably cut checks until late July.
Mhm.
Will that work for you guys to be able to do what you're doing? And then it's a little cleaner in our budget process because we just finalized it yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, I think what we could do potentially too is keep the grant program open. Excuse me, review applications, collectively until July, and then, but if we know that the funding is coming in, that at least gives us room
Then
to,
you know what you've got.
to
and-
plan.
And where some of these, if they're reimbursable, it may
Yep.
take them some time, especially if they're buying equipment or something, to actually get it in where they can ask for reimbursement.
Yep.
Since so many people are on back order with so many different things, so. Commissioners, what do you think?
I'm good with it.
Yeah.
Okay, so, we did not do a briefing and a motion. Do you guys want me to make a motion?
Yeah, I make a motion to replenish the funds of 75,000 to the small business grant program through the Frontier Chamber.
Do we need a date? In the new fiscal year?
Effective the 23-24 fiscal year budget funded sometime in July.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we replenish the Gilliam County Small Business Grant Program in the amount of $75,000 effective in the 2023-2024 budget year, effective July-ish. Is there further discussion?
Do we need to include the administrative fee on that as well in the motion?
We have previously, we've done $75,000
Plus the
plus
10%.
7,500 for administrative, for a total of 82,500.
Okay.
I amend my motion to reflect the administrative fee.
Okay.
That's
So,
what you said.
do you second the?
Second.
Okay, let me do, let me restate the motion a little bit more cleaner. So it has been moved and seconded that we replenish the Gilliam County Small Business Grant Program in the amount of 75,000 plus an administrative fee of 7,500 to the Oregon Frontier Chamber, effective for the fiscal year 2023-2024 budget, the check to come out sometime in July. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you,
So
guys.
Did What's Lloyd doing with the old beauty shop?
Hopefully a lot. That project's gonna have to go in phases, phase 1, 2, and 3.
You got an idea what he wants to do?
Yeah, this particular grant was for maintenance and Main Street appeal. So paint is chipping, the windows need to be replaced. It does need a foundation, and so recommendation was let's get started with the phase 1, and then our goal would be potentially to apply for a Main Street grant next year for his business.
Sits
So,
within that.
but since it is our money, can we ask about the potential applicants?
Say that again?
Since it is our money?
Yeah.
What type of business has been Tucker looking at?
His is for a used car repair shop.
Ah,
He was requesting tools.
badly needed.
Okay, good to know.
What we really need is somebody that just wants to service vehicles.
Mhm,
They didn't do
okay,
any more than that.
okay,
Be busy.
yeah. The other one that popped in yesterday was Two Boys Grocery. So
Where would you put that?
his shop, he wanted to do it at his house, which was some of the concern, right? Is there an opportunity to open up a Main Street business? What are the needs and the wants versus you have to have in order just to get going and operating, and
To do it in a residential.
there was that also realistic timelines of turning cars around and getting them sold. And so we're going to sit on this one for a little bit, make sure he's got a really thoughtful plan in place. Any other questions?
That's some good things in there.
Thank you guys for your
Yeah.
continued support.
Absolutely.
Means a
Thank
lot.
you For all your hard work.
Okay, thanks.
Have a great day.
You too.
Okay, let's move into 6.3, which is consider approval of vehicle purchases for Gilliam County Public Transportation. Let me just hold on, and put this back up here. Shania, do you want to take this, or is this Delaney or Leah? Who is this?
I think between the three of us, we can probably all get it figured out. I worked with Shania on getting the briefing prepared and helping her go through the intermediate procurement process to make sure we have the right number of quotes and things like that. So these vehicles she's looking to purchase are with existing grant funds from ODOT, and then a DHS grant. The DHS grant was awarded specifically for the purchase of an ADA accessible vehicle. So that would be for the purchase of the 2023 Toyota Sienna with the ADA conversion. Those vehicles are very hard to come by, so it took a lot of work for her to be able to find a company who's able to give her some quotes, as well as there are some issues with getting Toyota Siennas right now. A lot of the dealerships are saying that it is a year plus out, so she was only able to find one or two that were able to provide her quotes and actually guarantee that the vehicles would be delivered in a timely manner. And then the other one is for some, I believe it's stiff funds, rollover stiff funds that can be used to replace vehicles. These are some of the vehicles that we recently surplused as well to replace those vehicles.
So I guess I asked you before the meeting. If you've asked for quotes and now asking for the money, how come in the commitment you can't get a dollar amount in the motion?
So we have updated motions that will have the amount,
Okay.
and it's all grant money, so.
I understand that. I just think that it's.
So part of the reason they weren't in there the first time is some of these quotes vary by use. And so like if the 2023 Toyota Sienna, that with the ADA conversion, if she got a different model because it's an SE, or if she got an SEL, the amount changes by just like a couple $1,000s. And those vehicles, she's already gotten multiple quotes from that company, because the first quote they sent her, that vehicle sold. The second quote they sent her, that vehicle sold. So they're sending
I
quotes.
just don't like
based off
car
that.
dealerships at all, Delaney, and I'm having a hard time with them right now.
You know. I like
They need to make a
dealerships either.
commitment and not jerk you around.
Yes, I agree. So that's why we have amended agreements. Hopefully that we can get this done. If we get the commitment from the court today, she can get those sent, and then it
Get
can just
them
be a
locked
done
in.
deal. Right, Shania?
So, do you want me to make the motion then?
Sure, Lane.
Okay, I move to approve the purchase of the 2023 Toyota Sienna in the amount of 46,344 and the 23 type Toyota Highlander hybrid in the amount of 47,866 from Rogers Toyota of Hermiston, and to authorize the public transportation coordinator to execute the purchase agreement.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the purchase of the 2023 Toyota Sienna in the amount of $46,344 and the 2023 Toyota Highlander hybrid in the amount of $47,866 from Rogers Toyota of Hermiston, and to authorize the public transportation coordinator to execute the purchase agreements. Is there further discussion?
No, we maybe be able to purchase our new vehicles through grant process and put them in our new building.
Yeah,
Constructed through
absolutely.
grant.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye, any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, there's a second motion. Leanne.
Okay, I move to approve the purchase of the 2023 Toyota Sienna with the ADA conversion from Northwest Mobility in the amount of 76,297, and to authorize the public transportation coordinator to execute the purchase agreement.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the purchase of the 2023 Toyota Sienna with ADA conversion from Northwest Mobility in the amount of $76,297 to authorize the public transportation coordinator to execute the purchase agreement. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, any opposed? Motion carries. Oh,
Great job to Shania for doing all the work to get all these done. I know it took her quite a bit of time to get it and get it prepped, so.
good job, Shania. I'm sure she's probably on the phone with the client. Okay, moving on, 6.4, we added to the agenda, and this is just a brief sort of update on Philman. I assume that's how it's pronounced, versus the Secretary of State and counties regarding our common interest agreement. So as you guys know, because you were forwarded an email, we were contacted by our attorney. And there is a pending lawsuit currently going through, I forget which court, but where basically it's a class action lawsuit against the Secretary of State's office in all 36 counties related to our elections process. My understanding is the basis of it has to do with our mail-in voting system and the fact that the ballots are counted by machines. Is kind of the summary of it. I'm sure the plaintiffs would have a much more in-depth thing. So what happened was the original lawsuit named 13 counties. We were not one of them. And so the 13 plus the Secretary of State entered into a common interest agreement, which is not uncommon. Basically, what it does is it allows the Secretary of State's Department of Justice attorneys to work collectively with the legal counsels of each of the counties that were involved in the suit. And the nice thing about that is generally that keeps the county's legal costs reasonable, because the Secretary of State's DOJ is picking up a huge amount of the cost in terms of responding in court. Since the original lawsuit, it has now been amended to include all 36 counties. So we are now subject to the class action. And so basically, I don't need a motion. I just wanted to raise it with you guys so that you're aware of it. Ellen is here as well if you have questions about it. But I just by consensus wanted to make sure that we're okay with having our attorney engaging with this group of legal counsels who are working with DOJ to defend the county's election processes.
And I can't think why I wanted to know about it was what happens if we potentially lose? If the Secretary of State loses it, what potentially could happen to the county?
That's a great question, Leah. I don't have an answer for that. They
The
did,
unknown.
the first one, they replied to the first motion.
And instead of, they didn't reply. When Secretary, they put their motion in, instead of replying to the motion, that's when they amended their lawsuit. So it sounds like it's being delayed. I heard the allegations have little merit, but I'm not the law, I don't know anything about that. But the 36 counties and hopefully, the Secretary of State, hopefully something should move on.
I would expect if a judge were to rule against the counties and the legislature, because the vote by mail is state law, that's not something we just randomly decided
We
to
didn't just
adopt.
pick it out and say.
So the legislature would likely need to go back and tweak the law. I mean, I think that's what would have to happen, because basically a judge would be ruling that unconstitutional. And so the legislature would have to go in and fix the parameter, especially the vote by mail piece. I'm not sure on the machines, because that's an individual. I can't imagine how they would count in Multnomah County by hand. I mean, that just seems, wow. I mean, we could count here probably with the team, but I don't know
Yeah, 'cause
how.
they used to.
Yeah, I don't know how they would count in the larger counties if they were not able to use machines to do that. So we'll see, I guess. But I would imagine if it's the vote by mail piece, that the legislature would have to go back and rewrite the law at that point.
And vote by mail has been around for 30 years now. And on the Secretary website, they have a link. There's only 3 vendors for the ballot machines that have accredited certificates. And it's the certificates and everything is on the site for verification. So
I also think it's important maybe for folks to, I mean, originally we were not part of the lawsuit. Who knows strategically why they decided to expand it to everybody. But like part of existing elections law allows monitors to be in from the different parties. I mean, there's all kinds of things that Ellen has to provide for, so that there's transparency in the election process. If anybody has a question about what her election committee is doing, like, you're able to monitor that process the way you are in other states. So, part of this, I hope, people don't take away that there's any problem with how we're running our elections here, because that is not what's happening.
Yeah, I got quite a bunch of correspondence for a while with threats. Did you guys get them?
Yeah.
About Alan doing a bad job?
and on your email, there was a map. Did you guys see the maps attached? I thought that was very interesting, how they categorize likely clean, likely fraud, or strong fraud.
Yeah.
If you notice the counties in the green, which is Gilliam County, and then the yellow, and then the red, and how they came up with that. I would be interested to know what they based that on. And then they had the map of the whole US of the state.
Well,
Okay,
There
so
may be-
now I know.
and there may be other motivations behind
So
their suit.
what is our potential cost in this? Do we know?
So generally when we've, this is I think the second class action. One was not related to the election system. There was another one that we were part of a couple of years ago. In general, like, most likely what this is gonna be is a couple of hours of our legal counsel's time. I don't think most of the drafting, all of the appearances in court, DOJ will handle that. And in general, what they've done, the last one we defended was related to when the county receives property from from people not paying their taxes, kind of how those are treated. What they ended up doing was when when they figured out it was gonna be a bigger legal bill, they came back to each of us and said, here's gonna be your portion. And I think the last one, we ended up paying like $2,000 to $3,000 for our portion. But DOJ, if I recall, was actually not defending us that time. And so I would be surprised if this was more than a couple $100, honestly. So, yeah, it's nice when DOJ is defending us, then there's a lot of the cost is going to be borne by the Secretary of State's office in defending the election system, which is what it should be, honestly.
So I'm hoping they'll file again, just the motion to dismiss it. And then see what goes.
Yeah, and we'll keep you posted on, as we hear from Jeremy.
So we don't need to do anything on this.
I don't need anything unless you had an objection to us participating, because it's a small enough amount that, and he's our already established legal counsel, so
Yeah,
it was just whether we wanted to go alone in defending the county or be part of the group.
No. Let's
Okay.
just be part of
The group, okay, well, I will let our
but
legal
thank you
counsel
for
know.
filling me in.
Yeah, absolutely, to be part of this common interest agreement, and we'll keep you posted on what happens in the courtroom. Should be riveting, I'm sure.
I'm sure it will be.
Okay, moving on, we have 3 items that we pulled from consent that we'll move through. The first one is consider approval of vehicle use agreement with Oregon State University for extension services. Delaney, do you want to do just the high level,
Yeah.
what we're doing?
So this right here is just in partnership with the IGA for them. They are currently now utilizing Gilliam County public transportation vehicles, which they weren't before. And in order for them to be able to utilize that they have been busing kids back and forth between Condon and Arlington. They've used it for various 4-H field trips and stuff like that. OSU requires that we have a vehicle use agreement in place. It has been reviewed by both legal counsels for OSU extension and our legal counsel, as well as our insurance agency, Wheatland Insurance, reviewed it. And so this agreement was approved by all.
So this is new.
This is a new agreement because they have not utilized vehicles before, or if they have, the formal process wasn't done.
Okay.
Do you have a motion?
I move to approve the vehicle use agreement between the Oregon State University and Gilliam County. Is that good enough? Okay.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we approve the vehicle use agreement between Oregon State University and Gilliam County. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next one is 6.6. Consider approval of Gilliam County right-of-way activities application from Oregon Trail Solar. Jolie's here. Is this a Jolie or a Delaney? Who's taking this?
Jolie?
Jolie.
Guys have that application.
Louder.
You're the one that always talks quiet, but you can't hear you.
We can put you in the hot seat up here.
Oregon Trail Solar wants to, combine under the road master and plan director have reviewed the application. And it's just.
So this is gonna be similar to the line that they put under on Bottom Miller with Montag 2 that they didn't ask for? Threw the plate over the top?
So,
Okay, well, this at least gets it.
It
In
does
writing.
say that, Dewey worked with Michelle in the planning department to get this application done. So it has been reviewed by.
See,
both of
I
them.
think they did this on Bottom Miller, and did not go through this process.
Got it.
Okay. I move to accept the, what we're gonna call this, application for activities in the Gilliam County right of way between Gilliam County and this would be the Oregon Trail Solar LLC.
Correct.
A second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the application for activities in Gilliam County right away between Gilliam County and Oregon Trail Solar LLC. Is there further discussion?
I'd just like to say that it does say in big, black, bold letters, call before you dig.
Yes.
That they didn't do before.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, 6.7 is consider approval of IGA with ODOT for right-of-way access and detour on Ray Lane. Jolie, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, is going to do bridge projects in the downtown district. And they're gonna move traffic to go off the off ramp by the park and then back on ramp. And for over dimension permits or sizes and permits, they will go Ray Road. And then back onto 74 and then on 84. And they are. We were able to use that.
And one of the reasons I thought that should be in public meeting is because there've been some residents that been concerned, because the rumor was all the traffic off the 84 was gonna go down Lee Road.
Oh. No, good news.
And
So is
another
it just
part of-
anything over 80,000 then?
Anything, height, the weight, and length.
That has to have extended weight from there,
If you go on, working department of transportation, and just look up what you mentioned, it's, people that are concerned if they want to do that.
so like our trucks.
And this agreement would also authorize Dewey as the contact for Gilliam County when people are utilizing those routes as you currently.
Okay.
Any questions, concerns about this one?
How long are they gonna do this? How long is this gonna be going on?
The term, the terms on the front.
See what's like this.
Let's see.
I'm
You remember
assuming
Joey?
it's gonna be another,
No, it's been a conversation.
This
for the last
agreement
7 months.
shall become effective on the date all required signatures are obtained and shall remain in effect for the purpose of ongoing maintenance and power applicable responsibilities for the useful life of the facilities constructed as part of the project.
so forever.
So it's unknown.
Oh, the useful life is defined as 20 calendar year.
Yeah,
Projects shall be completed within 10 calendar years.
It's a very loose
it is the
document.
state of Oregon.
Wow, ODOT, wow.
I wonder what they'll do for the roof that's running, people have to get off at bigs and then.
Good Lord.
Is that a problem, you guys?
Are they gonna be coming through Condon then? Get off,
Who knows?
I like to see the other ones they have.
Man. Okay, well, other than the 20-year term, does anybody else have any questions? or
I'm like, it's
concerns?
affecting me, I'm
20-year detour. Wow,
I'm
okay.
letting Pat
Oh,
make this
I
one.
do see something in here. We probably need to amend. County's project manager for this project is Dewey Kennedy, but it lists a 384 number. If you go to, I don't know, condition 7, it's at the top of
yeah.
page 4.
Good catch.
Yeah,
So we might need to get them to amend that. And
I think you could have,
Uses a cell phone.
yeah, so we should probably put his cell phone on there.
Yeah, for everybody to know his number.
for the next 20 years.
So basically, this language does see, even though they give themselves a big window for the project, it's just for this project.
Yeah.
So I guess it's,
Assuming they have the money to complete the project.
And if anyone has any
Probably
other
won't.
questions, the state's project manager is Wade Luckman, and his information is also listed in this document.
Yes,
Those
so
your phone numbers, right?
for folks who would like to lodge a complaint, please see section 7, page 4, under state obligations.
Yeah, not under the other part. It's Dewey Kennedy number under number 7.
Okay, so
So Pat,
so, I would make a motion to approve the intergovernmental agreement between the state of Oregon, DOT, and Gilliam County to agree to state utilizing county's railroad lane between OR 19 and OR 74 as a detour route on an as-needed basis during the duration of the state's 184, Fulton US 197 without Rufus and Arlington Bridges project. Hereby referred to as the project.
As amended.
As amended.
Does anyone else remember the motion?
Would you mind?
Play that.
You want to shorten that up?
Would you mind if I amended that to say that you were approving the intergovernmental agreement with Oregon Department of Transportation for right-of-way access and detour on Ray Lane?
Yeah,
Okay,
for the project.
for the project,
For this project.
for this project.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. See, this is why we put it on the consent agenda, Pat.
I'm glad we have a video.
Here's the motion. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the intergovernmental agreement with Oregon Department of Transportation for right-of-way access and detour on Ray Lane for this project as amended. With the amendment being changing or updating Dewey's phone number. Is there further discussion?
Yeah, the discussion would be that since we pulled off the agenda, we're able to identify the amendments that needed to be put in it and the fact that it was a 20-year agreement.
Duly noted. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion
Jolie.
carries. Thanks, Jolie. Okay, moving right along, announcements and next meeting and adjournment. Next meeting is May 17th, 2023. That will be in Arlington. As you guys know, we just wrapped up the budget committee process yesterday, so I would expect probably not on the 17th, but maybe in the June, first June meeting for the budget to be up. So for folks who are missed your chance during budget committee, it's one last call coming up, so please look for those notices if you would like to weigh in on the upcoming county court or Gilliam County budget. Pat, what do you got going on?
Well, I attended the North Court Budget Board meeting on the 20th and then went on down to Salem. Was asked to go to the county college dinner. It was really interesting speaking with Commissioner Bethel from Marion County and talking about the difference in our populations. Issues. And so,
Now
yeah.
you know what we're going through at county college.
Yeah, so it was really interesting to listen to her presentation too, but did the radioactive waste.
Fascinating that she was homeless at one point.
Oh, yeah, and just some of the stuff she said, and she's quite a lady.
Yeah.
Attended the RAC meeting on the radioactive waste, where Mr. Jim Denson from Waste Management was playing a very active role.
That sounds riveting.
It is interesting. A little over my head, some of it. And then like I said, I went to the FEMA Biop Coalition meeting and went to the FEMA meeting in Pendleton. Went down to Ontario Friday to the Senate budget hearing and into that. Had an AOC membership meeting. Oh, we had an AOC membership meeting Monday. And of course, budget meeting, and then I am having back surgery on the 15th. I don't know what time, or what's involved, or how it affects me, so
Okay.
we'll let you know.
So you'll be on the meeting on the 17th then, huh?
I'm not sure.
Propped
what
up in
all
the
of
corner.
this- I'm not sure what, I have a pre-op tomorrow on the phone, so see if I can get some details.
Oh, man.
Okay.
Commissioners dropping like flies around here. Leah, what do you got going on?
I got my list this time.
Yay.
Because I felt like I slacked last time. So, we went to county college, and I have to just comment that they should not give us lunch and then schedule Oregon Department of Revenue taxation and assessment directly after lunch. It's a little hard to stay awake.
I'll make sure to tell Kristen.
I think I told her. And then I was just kind of comment on that, Pat, and Commissioner Bethel were there to speak, and you did a fine job representing us, Pat, so. And it was kind of interesting to see the contrast between the two counties. So Monday, April 24th, South Gilliam Health District had a work session. They discussed their medical software, and they're working on the upcoming budget process and the needs of their current staff since Holly Winslow has left as their administrator. On the 25th, I attended the STIP meeting, which Naya did a fine job of presenting all the grant information and the plans on the bus barn. So good job, Naya. On the 28th, I listened to the housing and homelessness deal on my phone, which I found out was kind of a mistake because when they went to the breakout rooms, I was stuck there.
Oh, no.
So my lesson learned was if I do that again, I need to be on Zoom for
Okay.
sure. And the other thing, they kept bringing up House Bill 4123, I think I wrote down. And it was like, okay, I should have brushed up on House Bill 4123 because I had no idea what they were talking about. I went in and read the one that I thought they were talking about, which was the House Bill 5019, but yeah. So I don't know how much I got out of that or. So
Are they talking mainly about houseless or they're talking?
they use the homelessness word a lot.
They kind of have changed their way of communicating and have identified houseless as different than homeless.
Yeah, and then
More of a focus
the
on
one thing
houseless.
they did say, I write that down, talking about, the homelessness prevention funds that are coming through from the federal, which is 45 million, which that sounds more like what we're looking at is prevention and not necessarily worrying about taking care of. But I'm sorry, I didn't do a better job. Because once they left to go to the breakout rooms, I was just kind of like, oh, okay.
What am I gonna do?
Yeah, so then I went again Monday to the South Gilliam Health District meeting, which they're having meetings almost every Monday. And they appointed Reen Durfee, so they have a full board now appointed. They're looking at their software. They appointed Nicole Schott as a budget officer. They appointed the budget committee and figured out a budget calendar. So they're moving along. I just gotta say, Kathy Johnson on that board is such an asset because of her past history and what she's doing, and yeah, she's gonna be,
Great.
That's awesome.
I'm like, maybe she needs to resign from the board and just
Run it.
step in as the interim.
Quit working in a mini mart.
Yep. Anyway, so then, let's see. Then they had another meeting and I went to it this Monday. And they're talking, Catherine Griner brought up a good thing about that getting special districts to come in and help them do a administrative search. That it benefited
Arlington.
the port. So we may be seeing them in here for special projects. I need to help with that. So just give you a heads up. I'm gonna go help Cindy with the QuickBooks on Friday. Do some of the AP and get them updated. And Daleen and I will have a public health staff meeting on the 8th. And then there'll be another work session that night, so They're just, cooking right along, hopefully getting some things figured out. So,
Well, kudos to people for stepping up and helping.
Yeah.
That's huge
Yeah.
for the board, I'm sure.
and I think, there was a suggestion of, separating out the administrator duties from the actual financial duties, so. But right now, the board is, Cindy's kind of overseeing the staff and any of their concerns, and Paul's been helping with repairs and stuff. Tori's been doing the minutes, recording and doing the minutes. And then Kathy's expertise in the other stuff, and then Reen just got on there, so. But she'll only serve till June, when the election. And then we'll see who's on it from there. I think they're working hard to, yeah. And so far next meeting will be the quarterly report that I submitted to Delaney. So Holly did get the quarterly report into OHA prior to leaving, so we got till the end of July for the other one, so.
Great. Let's see, for me, couple things to note tomorrow, I think it's tomorrow, yes, for the meet and greet for the
Frontier
911. So, Frontier 911, the board is going to be meeting with their preferred candidate for the new director position. Or the existing position, but the new candidate for it. And there will be a public meet and greet. So if anybody is interested in meeting her, I did the initial interviews, and she is, I hope everybody else likes her as much as I did. I think she will be a huge asset if we can make her an offer.
And where's she from?
She right now is the director of a center in Kansas, but she's originally from Baker County. So she's trying to move back closer to home. So anyway, for folks who are interested in meeting the candidate, like, I think that's tomorrow at 11. So please do take advantage of the opportunity to interact and ask questions and provide feedback to the board members. It's a big job and a really important job.
And where are they having that at?
ESD conference.
Down at the conference room. And then the board itself will be meeting next week on Tuesday, the 11th at 1 o'clock. That'll also be down in that conference room. That's where they will actually make a final hiring decision. So this is sort of the last opportunity for folks to weigh in prior to that decision being made. I am going to be at AOC early next week, Monday and Tuesday, to do normal AOC stuff, the ledge committee, etc. Let's see, what else are we working on? Did want to note that I was accepted onto the Rules Advisory Committee for Certified Centers for the state. So there were, I think they said over 130 people applied. There were 16 of us selected. I think there's 3 of us from Eastern Oregon. So it'll be trying to represent our center and hopefully smooth some problems out in, they were saying, we did an initial kind of introductory call last week, and they were saying the last time that this entire rule set had been totally opened up was 2001. So it has not been opened up for 20 some years completely. So it's a really good opportunity to completely rethink what the state rules are regarding licensing and ratios and all of the things. So I'm really excited to be able to participate in that. We are in budget season, so there is a Frontier Telenet Budget Committee meeting on Thursday, the 11th. That's at 1:30. And it looks like that's basically it for upcoming meetings. In terms of stuff that I'm working on, the usual suspects, really. A lot of our time recently has been working on the summer work experience, getting that, working with Amy and Miranda and Delaney to kind of map out, we're each taking different parts and working together to make sure that that's a smooth program for everybody. And then working on mostly childcare access, the usual suspects, fiber housing, and just keeping the lights on. Anything else that I missed?
How is the port doing with like abatement of the grade school and the purchase of the property and?
So they're under contract on the property. We will have an amendment coming shortly for officially allowing the Willow Creek dollars for the port to be able to use those for workforce housing. I assume they're going to use that on the purchase of the property.
Annexation is in process through the city and city.
Okay, so they're working on that.
And actually, they were gonna annex in the water tower and stuff. They're doing almost one annexation. Jed has plotted the initial plotting for some R2 and R1 in the existing house and shop. So they, once they get the annexation, and they can move that through planning.
My understanding on the grade school is that they're still waiting to hear back from the state on the brownfields grant before they can move forward with the abatement. So that one's still pending. Anything else? I think that's it. All right, anything else for the good of the
So
order?
the rulemaking process is really detailed and interesting. That's the one thing about being on the radioactive waste side, just the detail is amazing.
Yeah, the draft rules that we're going through, I think are 120 some pages. And yeah, we're taking them in chunks and 2 hour,
And it's not. they don't-
2 hour
they
time frames.
Don't blow through it fast, and it's a lot of detail, a lot of input, a lot of discussion.
Yeah,
So they'll go through the old draft and decide what they want to throw out and what they want to add, or what are they? just start from
so
scratch?
they started back, I want to say maybe 8-9 months ago, and they did, this is sort of the third round, I guess. So they did some community engagement up front. So they did some listening sessions, and then they did some other, I can't remember exactly like what the middle one was between the initial engagement, but basically the staff totally redrafted everything. So they reconfigured it, so it was more intuitive. They redrafted all of the language, basically. So it'll be all fresh from scratch. And then this group will take it apart and figure out what works and what doesn't, and what, you know, just provide feedback, the 16 of us. And then how they explained it to me is we'll be meeting every Friday, basically for the next 5 or 6 weeks. And then after each session, they'll go back to their legal counsel and other people to decide if the language that we're suggesting can work. And then once we have a final product that the rules advisory committee signs off on, it goes to the actual early education council, which is the one who will actually have to enact it.
So in the legislative process, they write the law, run it
Correct.
through the House and the Senate, get it approved, send it to rulemaking, and all the rulemaking happens once
Right.
that legislation's been approved.
Correct, yeah,
It goes-
so,
It's really assigned to a department or an agency and
correct.
to enact that through the rulemaking process.
Most of the time, I mean, sometimes the legislature will get into the details, but most of the time in most legislative processes, basically what they're doing is they're authorizing an agency, this jurisdiction kind of thing. And so in this case, for most of the licensure rules, those are a delegated responsibility of the Early Learning Council. So, and this group is advising the Early Learning Council. on the
So they
final
write,
product.
they write the rule about your rules.
Correct, exactly.
I know they
Okay,
talked about one time, if they just, in the whole state, if they just relax the ratio on the older kids by 1, that it would change dramatically across the whole state.
the thing is it's funky though, because the state there's the licensing. So there's what, when the state comes in and says, are you in compliance? There's that. And then now that the state has funding streams going through, those have different ratio requirements and they don't match. So like their preschool promise funds, which is like their new program that they're doing to try to get more kiddos access to preschool. The state licensure is a 1-to-10 ratio and groups no more than 20. But if you run preschool promise dollars through, it's a 1-to-9 ratio, groups no larger than 18. So what happens in like Condon is if you have the 19th kid, they're either on a wait list or you have to go ask for permission from the state because you're running preschool promise dollars through. So there's some funkiness even
Yeah.
in there
And they
too.
don't match up.
Yeah, the different funding streams each have their own ratios attached to them that Janine has to track and keep in compliance. And I just say Janine because Arlington doesn't take preschool promise right now. But I think the school district will be when they absorb preschool, so they'll have to comply with the state requirements on those things, so. It's fun times, but
Yes. Glad you're taking it on.
yeah, I love it, actually, so.
I can tell you from being a mother that just went from sitter to sitter to sitter. Your mom went through the same thing. It was just a nightmare.
Yeah.
Cause you think you had a sitter and then you'd show up one day and they go, oh, I'm gonna be quitting here in a couple months. It's like, to start all over again. Yeah. So having daycare centers and places for those kids to go is important.
Yeah, agree. Okay, anything else for the good of the order?
Not for me.
Okay, it is 12:11 and I will adjourn the meeting.